Oh, I can see it now. Yeah, sorry, I had my another window up, so I couldn't see anything.
Rich, stop talking. Hello, guys. How you doing? So this is the Carnivore Q&A, Team GB. So everyone on this panel today is from the UK. I think we're actually all from either England or Wales. I think Richard's the outcast in this situation. We're hoping to get more people on from our native local area in coming weeks at some point. Basically, I come up with this idea to have people in the UK to celebrate the carnivore diet, all their achievements, and give some people some useful tips based on what we've understood so far in some cases, very long journeys. I mean, Phil here has been here doing carnivore diet for about 8 years. Coach Stephen's been there doing a low carb diet at least for a long time now. Richard Smith, the Keto Pro, excellent information. He's been keto for a long time. We've also got Ben, who's a bit newer in this scene, but his insights are also very valuable. I'm just going to quickly go over my background first, and I'll leave each of these gents to go through their stories as individuals. So I'm a 28-year-old man from the UK. I live half my time in Bournemouth in the south coast and half the time in Woking, about an hour outside of London. And what I basically did was I started the carnivore diet on the February the 2nd, 2020, about 3.5, nearly 4 years ago now, wanting to sort of reduce some symptoms I had. So joint pain, inflammation, digestive issues, cognitive impairment, you might say. So depression, anxiety, and also symptoms of autism. For those of you who don't know, I did have a spine fusion surgery about 10 months ago now. That's probably the most significant thing I can really talk about. And my recovery from that was very, very much improved because of the diet. So I was out exercising again within about 7 or 8 days of my spine surgery. Most people don't do that for about 3 months. So the journey so far has been very beneficial to me, but I'll leave each of these guys to introduce themselves in a bit more detail than I have.
Stephen, do you want to go next?
Well, Ben, when you unmute it, see, the thing is, we're all very British. We're just proving that we're British because we're all like, well, not me. No, I'm not going to go next. So, yeah, I can do this quite quickly. 5 years carnivore, 10 years low carb. Before that, I believed in high carb, no red meat, no fat in my diet. So, poor old Phil, Rich. Well, I think everybody in the room's heard this, but maybe some people haven't heard it. I was having porridge every morning, skim milk, freshly squeezed orange juice, blueberries. I was not touching red meat. I was taking the fat off the meat. I wouldn't dare touch it. And then I got into my 40s. And even though I was a personal trainer and I was doing all the things that the WHO told me to do, I was getting fatter and I was getting sicker. I had lower left quadrant pain, colonoscopy. Thought I was going to die of colon cancer because my parents both died of cancer. My mum of colon cancer, even though she was on bran flakes and cereals and wholemeal bread and not touching red meat and fat and all that. Well, anyway, I got into my 40s, coronary artery calcium scan of 639, and I went on YouTube. I found Dr. Eric Berg, went low carb, actually. That's how I started. And all my problems started to resolve. I stopped being pre-diabetic. I stopped getting fatter. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I haven't done the entire time there. Can you imagine that, Phil? Not drinking for that long. And it was just amazing that I did everything right. And I'm glad I didn't smoke. I'm glad I didn't drink. I'm glad I was active. I'm glad I did all the things I was supposed to do, because I know categorically that all that stuff is rubbish. And once I went low carb, it all got better. And then, of course, following people like Ken Berry, strange enough, sort of like a parallel universe. I started to go keto when he did, not because he did, it just seems to be quite organic. And then I got to age 55, decided to be a carnivore coach. I trained under Dr. Sean Baker at Meaty, and here I am 5 years later, fitter, stronger, faster, 59, looking forward to being 60, and that's my story.
Richard, you're up? Yeah.
You're up, Richard.
Me, there we are. I was going to say, which way are we going, gents? I was going to move across to Ben, but no, thanks for that. Yeah, quick and easy for me. Richard Smith, founder of the Keto Pro. In my mid to late 20s, I was clinically obese, type 2 diabetic, suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines that would make me blind, all of which I was on a myriad of medication for. And in my mid to late 20s, I could barely walk up the stairs without stopping or being severely out of breath. And I was doing everything that we were told that we should be doing. I was eating from the eat well plate, the food pyramid, but the healthier that I seemed to try to become, the more ill that I became. I won't bore you with the boring long version, but I stumbled upon low carb and keto, and within a very short space of time, I managed to reverse my diabetes. Within a few weeks, 12 months, I managed to lose 107 pounds of body fat. So coupled with reversing the diabetes, I was now pain-free, medication-free, and I went on to become a keto coach, trained as a nutritionist, and then I began teaching others the keto life. Slowly gravitated into carnivore. So I have been on my journey for 10, 11 years, 4 of which has been carnivore. The last year I'd class as being strict carnivore. And my lifestyles allowed me to not only go from being clinically obese and diabetic and fixing and repairing those issues, but I went on to become a professional athlete and British and European champion in men's physique bodybuilding, which is absolutely incredible when you think that, for somebody to go from being unable to walk up the stairs to that. And then from that, I've come away from bodybuilding. As you can see, I'm considerably smaller, and now I've gone into competing in duathlons and triathlons, so running and cycling. And part of what I do, I'm founder of the Keto Pro, so I help people. I'm an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration, the Noakes Foundation. I work with Diabetes UK and the NHS. We work alongside doctors and help people in regards to all sorts of illnesses, diseases, diabetes, all the way up to cancers and tumors. And part of what I do is offer coaching and products and supplements to enable people to live the lifestyle effectively and safely. I'm glad to be here. So thanks for the invitation, Jonathan, and excited to be on board. Over to Ben. Or Phil, even. There we are.
I think we're going around that way, aren't we? There's Ben's idea. Yeah, amazing story there, Richard. Brilliant. Yeah, I have a slightly different one. I was, I'm the granddad, I think, here. I'm 61 now, and I've been into studying diet and lifestyle for 40 odd years, I think, and I had it completely wrong for about 30 of them. And I used to write books on plant-based eating and all that sort of thing, and sort of kind of came out that a little bit in the late 90s and ran my own gym and got pretty big. Then through the early 2000s, got pretty fat instead. And 2010, completely crippled with psoriatic arthritis, and fixed that. It took me about 3 years with some silly diversions into veganism and whatever, which gave me nothing in the field of reducing inflammation, but it did give me kidney stones. But then went low carb, having discovered Natasha Campbell McBride and then Jack Cruse's work and whatever, and went low carb, started to fix myself, wrote my book that became a bestseller, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, that's still out there. And 2015, I decided I felt better on the days I didn't cook any veg. So it's been 8 years carnivore for me now, and really rewarding, just doing consults and seeing wonderful results with autoimmunity, wonderful reversals of this and that, and also, the big C that we're not allowed to talk about, of course. And now, I've been part of the team that produced the Red Pill Revolution books that Ben put the words together for. And I see that he's got the Big Fat Challenge as his subtitle under there. And I completely forgot to put that on. And so now I work with Ben on the Big Fat Challenge. It's a 90-day challenge, helping people to understand about the benefits of animal fats and ancestral living. And that's where I am now.
Brilliant. Well, I'm Ben Hunt. I'm I'm in the middle age-wise. I'm 51 years old now, just a few days ago. And I mean, I feel slightly embarrassed that I haven't been obese or crippled. I actually came into this via a much more circuitous route, because a few years ago I was really into gardening and no-dig gardening. I designed and built my own greenhouse in my garden. I was growing my own veg, chilies and stuff like that. And I was convinced that the way to save the world and the way that we could all live more healthy and peaceful, prosperous lives was to grow a load of veg. And that then led me to explore a load of stuff. I started going to conferences organized by like the Oxford Real Farming Conference and the Sustainable Food Trust and stuff like that. All with the idea of drawing down carbon out of the atmosphere and building soil. And when I was at these conferences, people starting to stand up and talk about weird stuff like the importance of ruminant animals for the soil and for the environment. And what's more, they started slipping in things like the essential importance of DHA and EPA and CLA and all these other things, as though eating meat was actually not just important for the earth, but important for our health as well. So just being somebody who's always been curious about finding out new knowledge and new information, I started looking around and I came across Phil's Facebook group, 100% Carnivore and Beyond. And I thought, seriously, people? I mean, I'd heard about banting and stuff like that a few years ago, and I thought it was all woo and couldn't, because everybody knows that you can't just eat meat. But yeah, I started to learn a little bit more, and yeah, met Phil. We started working together, and the rest, as they say, is history. So here we are.
Yeah, that's great, Phil and Ben. It's that you did the Big Fat Challenge. I think that was one of the best things that I've seen online, actually. I think it's really good. And I think people might be surprised that we're all quite happy to talk about each other's services. It's not a competition. That's the one thing that I think we all decided behind the scenes. Well, let's go through the people that have commented, you see. And what you'll find is that one person might like Ben, one person might like Phil, one person might like Jonathan, one person might like Richard, and then obviously 10 people might like me. So, it's, I'm joking, by the way. So it's good just to get everybody in the UK to be part of this. So I just want to quickly flash up the comments, and if anyone knows these people or how to pronounce that first name.
I know Zbigniew. I've known him for a year now. So it's Zbigniew Warzenek. You won't get it first time, but he's a great guy. He's been following my channel now for pretty much since I started, and he always initiates the hit the like button. So it is quite helpful having one. He's a really nice guy. He'd stick around definitely. So I'm grateful to have him here and grateful to have him as a client.
Brilliant. That's great.
So Rachel's highlighted Phil's recent interview with Ahmed Malik, which is
you're jumping ahead, Ben. You're jumping ahead.
I'm so excited.
I've got loads here. Let's do this. So we got Rick here. Does everybody know Rick?
I know Rick. Yeah, we've collaborated a couple of times. He's good fun, and he does have a YouTube channel himself, so I recommend subscribing to him. He's a carnivore who's been doing it for probably about 40 years at this point. I think he's probably about 50, and he doesn't look about 50. He's one of those sort of guys, so I'm quite envious of him. But he's got some great insights. He does have a channel. He doesn't talk much about carnivore for a carnivore channel, but his videos are hilarious. He'll just film the ducks mating and have a good time. I do recommend following him on YouTube.
The next name up, I think Rich knows very well.
Yeah, I think we both know Matthew. Yeah, he's a guy from the UK, a weightlifter.
I was prompting Rich there to pipe in because Matthew's a big fan.
Yes, we love Matthew. Good supporter.
Right, okay. Kyle, hit the like button. Should be a good one. Well, that name is new to me.
I know Kyle. Yeah, Kyle's a great guy. He lives in, I think it's in Canada. I can't for life of me remember where it's from. But it's a funny name. Oh, no, Nova Scotia he's from. He's a great guy. He's also an athlete, like a physical athlete. He's very fit guy. You know, honestly, I'd probably give Richard a run for his money, I reckon.
And Nova Scotia, doesn't that mean New Scotland? Anyway, Jay, I don't know Jay. Maybe that's one of yours again, Jonathan?
Yeah, sorry, that's one of mine as well. That's Jay, but his real name's Jamie, but he's a good guy. He's a very pleasant guy. He works a lot on the road. He trains a couple of times a week. He loves his family, and he's just like the rest of us, like real, honest, hardworking people. This
is great, isn't it? Former fat girl.
That's my one as well.
Yeah, this is good. Well, you're obviously putting a shift in, Jonathan, getting people up.
Nicole. Lambs, yeah,
right, okay. This is amazing.
Dutch gentleman.
Yeah,
right, okay.
I know Lambs too. Hello.
Excellent. The Carnivore cabbie.
Cool.
Well, if he's a cabbie, it's surprising that he came on time, actually. But anyway, right. Now look, we got a superstar listening, Dr. Rachel Brown. There you go. And I think this is what Ben was referring to. Fire away, Ben.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun there, but yeah, Ahmed Malik, wonderful guy. Phil's been on his podcast, and which he actually only started this May as well. So he's somebody that just started asking questions. I mean, mainly to do with COVID and all that kind of stuff as well. But the things that he's learning and picking up from everyone that he has on his channel, the guy's like headfirst down the rabbit hole and sometimes in a spin, but absolutely. Lovely soul, lovely human being as well, and getting more and more meat into his diet as well. So thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he? I've become good mates with him. We chat a lot. And Rachel, have you not been on his podcast as well? I think you have.
Message. We're a little behind in the messages, so you might see that pop up. Yeah, and we've got Beth. Well, I know Beth. Does anyone else know Beth?
I need to get out more. I don't know anything to people. Maybe I'm just fundamentally antisocial.
Copper's Carnival Kitchen. That's sort of Rich and I. We definitely have encountered Copper's Carnival Kitchen. I think we've nearly caught up here. And thank you very much, Tom J. And I'll do my joke. Is it Tom Jones? Well, it wouldn't be unusual, would it? So that's that. And we've got Carl. Come on, Rich, pipe up, mate. You know Carl.
Yes, Carl's a good friend of mine. Yeah, good supporter. I'll be seeing Carl on Saturday. He's popping in to see me for some merchandise and some supplements. So looking forward to catching up with Carl. Nice to see you on again tonight.
Cool. We might talk about supplements a little bit. Keto Mama. Meat, the only way to eat. And lots of meat emojis. Then we got Dr. Rachel Brown has said something. Ahmed is getting the truth out there. So many carnivores have been on. So I'm missing out, really. So there we go. We're nice and caught up, so we can relax a bit now. Because I think if people have bothered to wait, I mean, some of those people have been waiting online for 20 minutes. So I think we should have gone through that. But that's great. And thank you, Rachel, for checking in. Now, you're in the UK, and that screen is way too male for my liking. So, Rachel, we've got to get you on. If you'd like to be in this mix, that'd be great. Not right now, but I mean, we could do that next week, maybe. And I'm sure that's fine. I would imagine so anyway. Right.
Definitely. There's a question here.
There is from Unknown.
Oh, that's another one I've seen. Above that.
We do with this one first.
Carnival cabbie.
Go on. Oh, he's got a question. Really? Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Sorry. Well done, Phil. Question. Left A&E yesterday with a vague diagnosis of gout. No blood done. Blamed carnivore diet. In agony. Others have said it's oxalate dumping. Any thoughts? I've got thoughts on that, but if anyone else wants to dive in.
I'm sure we all have. Should we pass it over, first of all, to our gout sufferer here, Ben?
Yeah. So I mean, Stephen, you and I have discussed this at length before as well on previous interviews, but yeah, I never got gout until I went high fat, low carb. And then I've had maybe 6 or 7 attacks of gout, and it is horrible. right? According to, I think Ken Berry says that women have told him that there are only 3 things worse than childbirth. And I think gout and kidney stones are 2 of them. I'm not sure what the 3rd one is. But yeah, it's absolutely horrible. And every time I get it, I think, how have I broken my foot? Because I can't put any weight on it and whatever. So yeah, very likely it is gout. Now, the traditional wisdom is that meat, because it has purines in it, and the purines compete for excretion by the kidneys with uric acid, and then the uric acid builds up, blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely not true. I'm convinced that isn't true. And you do mention oxalate dumping in your question. Now, Phil's interviewed Sally K. Norton about this as well, and I made sure that he asked her about that. So, yes, I am convinced that oxalates could very well form a part of this. So in the way that I understand it, so my gout issues always seem to have followed minor trauma to my feet, because it's always followed either playing rugby or refereeing rugby, running around in boots, and then just a slight, distortion of the foot joints, causing local inflammation. And then because I was on high fat, low carb, and because oxalates store up over the years, and the more green leafy nonsense that you eat, your body just keeps storing it and never gets to excrete that stuff, which we normally would have done ancestrally over the winter time. You consume fruits with the sugars, the fructose, you might get some fat in your liver, you might get some deuterium and all that kind of stuff. And ancestrally, we'd have peed and breathed all that stuff out over the winter time, and we'd start the next year completely clean and detoxified. Now, if you are being a dutiful vegetable muncher, you're putting oxalates into your body every day, your tissues and even your bones will never really get a chance to excrete those oxalates again, because we're getting spinach flown in from all around the world, every day of the year. And so what I think it is, local inflammation with maybe a slight trauma, and then somehow the oxalate, because my body was then just dumping all the oxalates at once, because I was on that carnivore, there's so much oxalate going around that the oxalate seemed to be drawn to that inflammation. That's the way I think, because the inflammation tends to spread and then kind of stop spreading. So there are some very, very good videos out there. Rob Sivers has done one. Ken Berry has done one. Sean Baker has done one. Look up all of those on gout, and they all say the same thing, and that completely aligns with my experience. Give it a year or 2, and the attacks should stop, because your body has then just got rid of the oxalates. Okay. Now, it is obviously very, very painful and unpleasant to have. So what you could do as well is go on a very low oxalate diet rather than zero oxalate, because in zero oxalate, everything will go, okay, we're oxalate free. Everyone, and every cell independently starts dumping its oxalates. Okay. Now, if you have, for example, a square of dark chocolate each day, or a couple of cups of black tea, these are relatively high oxalate foods, but have them in small amounts to have a little bit of oxalate in your system. And that may then allow your body to get rid of the oxalates in a more timely and controlled manner. So that is my understanding about it so far. I don't think purines has got anything to do with it. But also, the other thing worth saying is every gout attack I've had has been after a week or so of drinking too much beer. Alcohol is known to be a trigger, and beer particularly so. So that's all I have to say on that.
And I'm looking at the other people, that whether they're unmuting, ready to speak. But I would just want to say, former Fat Girl has put a brilliant thing here. Please be sure to put a Q in front when asking a question, so it sticks out in the chat. That would be really helpful for me. The other guys seem to have X-ray vision when I was chatting and finding the questions, but I think putting a Q in front is a great idea. Just on the phlebotomy side of things, the correlation, I know correlation and causation don't go together, but what I'm going to say is nothing to do with that, really. I had many people, I must have seen over 1,000 blood tests when I was doing the phlebotomy, and people with high uric acid didn't have gout, and some people with low uric acid did. So it's really pointless to say, oh, you've got high levels of uric acid, that's why you've got gout, because then you have to scratch your head and say, well, what about all the people that haven't? And I think when I was talking to Sean Baker about this, because he's got a phlebotomy background, I was very interested in the surgery, and he was saying that you could go into a joint that is painful and there would not be those sort of inflammatory markers actually within the joint, and yet there are healthy joints that have got them in. So I think, Ben, you're much more likely to be on the right line there with that. Rich or Phil, did you want to speak up, or Jonathan? Or should we move on to the next question?
Actually, if I can jump in again to Carnivore Cabby, the last gout episode that I had started off April of this year. Okay, so this is about two to 3 years after I started high fat, low carb. And what happened was it was a kind of a long lingering attack. Normally gout will resolve itself in 7 to 10 days. This one went on for 5 weeks. And it was more a kind of a systemic arthritis in my whole foot and ankle. And I completely eliminated it with a 48-hour dry fast. I was absolutely amazed. I've shown lots of people the pictures. I don't think I can show them, right now. I don't know how to do that on the tech. But that is the one thing I would do. If I got a gout attack right now, the first thing I would do, no food, no water, 48 hours, and it will blow it out of the park. That's it. The other thing that I found gave some help as well was to keep a couple of bottles of water in the freezer, and I take one and put it in a basin and literally just put my foot in it and go alternate, put it in, take it out, and that can help with just manage inflammation and the pain to some degree. But the dry fasting, in my experience, for blowing up that systemic inflammation is just wonderful.
Phil?
Yeah, Ben's pretty much covered it. I think if you have a gout attack when you go carnivore, even if you do nothing else, just stay carnivore. It'll probably have a couple of flare-ups and then it tends to disappear unless you drink a load of beer. But the oxalate dumping thing is a very real thing. And, I've been there with the kidney stones. I haven't been there with the gout. But, Ben's covered it, really. Yeah, I think.
Phil, where can people find your interview with Sally K. Norton?
Yeah, on the Red Pill Buddhist podcast, we got into a lot of the sort of symptoms of oxalate dumping, how long it might last, how to mitigate it, whatever. Sally's pretty much bang on about that, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. I think if people want to check that out, what we'll do in the descriptions, hopefully, is put everyone's channel in there so you can check that out. And I'll just plug Rich and I's live stream, because we're doing that 7 o'clock Sunday night, and we've got the guest Sally K. Norton. So
yay.
Here we go. So you could watch Phil's brilliant one with Sally, and then you'll be armed with better questions and try and trip Rich and myself up, and Sally maybe. But anyway, we've got Unknown here. So I think just for the guys, if you want to speak, just unmute. So Rich, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything's been added there in regards to gout attacks, but it's, I know we are interviewing with Sally K. Norton on Sunday in regards to other things that we can do to combat the oxalate dumping. And one of the suggestions is calcium supplementation, because calcium will bind to the oxalate. But we, myself and you, Steve, have got other thoughts in regards to calcium supplementation. Calcium supplementation has been known to increase cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. It's also one of the main driving factors to cramp, excess calcium and not enough magnesium. But alternative measures may be taken by increasing potassium. One of the issues that we face when we live a keto or carnivore lifestyle is we increase sodium, because we come in from a state of high insulin. Insulin drops, signals the kidneys to release sodium from 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys, which can lead to inadequate sodium levels. So, quite rightly, we resupplement with lots of sodium, but sodium depletes potassium, and potassium is required 4 times higher volumes than sodium within the body. So supplementing possibly with potassium or even magnesium can further mitigate any other potential side effects of oxalate dumping to a degree. How long that will take is anyone's guess, but I guess we can go into that in more details with Sally on Sunday.
Would that ideally be the citrate versions of it?
Yeah, do you know, I'm still looking at some of the papers because it some confer benefits to citrate and others, depending on whether it's magnesium or potassium, there's a lot of conflicting evidence. Citrate seems to be the form that we want to go for, but I'm hoping I'm going to be armed with more information come Sunday, so I'm still doing a little bit of research into that. But I'm not a big fan of calcium supplementation, so I'm always looking for alternatives. I understand that it would confer a benefit in regards to oxalate dumping, but if we are looking at excess calcium consumption leading to 15% increase in cardiovascular disease, and that's certainly something that I would want to address. And I think that living, the common misconception is living a carnivore lifestyle that we are devoid in calcium, but calcium is found in everything that we eat in a lot higher forms than people give credit to. And I think that the way that we live, I think we get adequate amount of calcium, and we certainly don't want to be adding to that. I just think we can mitigate those negative side effects with potentially potassium or magnesium over the calcium. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Should be good.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Good link to a question about dairy then, Stephen.
Yeah, we'll get on to that question. Yeah, I just want to say, if you're ever worried about what sort of thing to take for if you've got constipation, if you think of Sean Connery talking about magnesium, it's magnesium citrate. All right, and that's going to help you. All right, so that's just a little bit of anyway. Right, so unknown. Ben, here you go. Yes, you spotted this. Is raw cheese okay on a carnivore diet for weight loss? Also, should I ever track anything? Because some days I find myself eating a lot of meat because I'm really hungry.
Okay, can I be controversial on this one?
Yeah.
It's something that happened at the Sheffield conference recently. Ben and I were there with my friend Sophia Clemens from Paleomedicina in Hungary, and she's very much against all dairy for everything. They have their PKD diet, their Paleolithic ketogenic diet, very high fat, meat only. For reversing everything, they're as strict about getting rid of dairy as they are about grains. Now, a lot of people who get into dairy and whatever say that raw dairy is really good stuff. Now, I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced. I know I do better without it, much better without it. And we don't need all the calcium from it, as Richard said, from supplementation or excess dairy. We don't really need it. But some people think that raw dairy is incredibly healthy. Now, this actually confirms my own personal experience and of my clients. Mostly I speak to people with autoimmunity, and they don't do well on dairy. They have problems. If you're autoimmune, you generally have problems with all dairy, whether it's raw or not. But most people, they have a problem with dairy that they react to it very quickly, like the lactose intolerance and whatever, because in pasteurized dairy, the lactase is damaged, which stops you, digesting the lactose. But at the same time, also the growth factors are damaged. Now, when Ben and I were walking around the Peak District with Sophia, and I've got a little video of it and then a full podcast about it actually later, but a little video just saying, Sophia's just hit us with something saying that raw dairy is actually worse than pasteurized dairy. Because although people get the immediate reaction from pasteurized dairy, the growth factors are more intact in the raw dairy. So you digest it better to start with, so you don't get such issues of lactose intolerance or whatever, or any sort of inflammation or whatever people feel from dairy, gut issues. But then down the line, those growth factors are more intact and they contribute to unusual cell replication, because as Ben pointed out in our little chat with Sophia, milk is designed to make a small animal into a large animal. And past weaning, no species really eats dairy, drinks milk, especially of another species. So that's probably the one area I agree with vegans. People do great on raw dairy. If you want to do it, it's your own choice, absolutely fine. However, you're asking about weight loss here. I wanted to bring that point in about the unusual cell issues. I find that if I do my first 4 years carnivore, I ate basically meat and butter, and I was great. No joint pain, that all healed up, everything. But once I dropped the butter and went to tallow instead, a load of sinus issues cleared up and my abs popped out again. No exercise. And I think what we've seen, particularly on the Big Fat Challenge, particularly for women, if they're eating dairy and they have a weight loss stall, let's call it fat loss because we don't want to talk about bone density and muscle mass. You don't want to lose that. So fat loss stall on a carnivore diet, and they drop the dairy, quite often then the fat loss kicks in again. So I'd say that I don't know. It's all in the I don't know bin for me. But I think that raw dairy, there's a lot of evidence out there that it might be even worse than pasteurized dairy in the long run, not in the short term. And for fat loss, it's not ideal to eat too much dairy on carnivore.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree as well. It's the casein in dairy is going to cause intestinal permeability in everyone, whether it's raw or not. And I know there's a big movement within the carnivore community in regards to A2 and raw milks and raw dairy products. But the casein will cause that intestinal permeability, and it's something I can attest to, as Phil said myself. When I began my ketogenic journey, I was making these spinach smoothies with black pepper and turmeric. But I felt amazing. But I felt amazing in spite of, not because of. I felt better because I'd cut out all the processed rubbish. And I was benefiting from my body producing and utilizing beta hydroxybutyrate and blocking NLRP3 inflammasome and helping fight inflammation and being having higher concentration and cognition. So I was healthier in spite of. So I was eating, lots of cheese and raw milk, and I felt the best that I'd ever felt. So I could have argued at the time that these products are fantastic because I felt so good. But when I removed them, I became even healthier and fitter again, and other ailments and aches and pains began to dissipate, and I improved even further. So it's all about where you want to be on that journey. I think it's we're all on this ladder. If being low carb sees a benefit, if that confers a benefit to you, and that's sustainable, then that's fantastic. If you want to be dirty keto, I mean, I'm all for anywhere that clients and customers can be sustainably, because I think that's the key for me, is keeping it sustainable. But the deeper down that rabbit hole that you go, the cleaner that you can become, and the more you can remove these toxic products, the better and healthier that you are going to become. And in my opinion, a strict carnivore is the creme de la creme, but anywhere in between is going to confer, a significant benefit. If you can remove the cheese, even better. But coming back to the original question, I believe that it's when I was cut in for competitions in bodybuilding, at the time I was eating cheese, and when I was cut in, cheese would be the first thing, cheese and double cream and all this sort of stuff that I was consuming at the time. That would be one of the first things that I would cut out, and I would allow my body to increase its own fat burning processes and strip up to incredible conditions. So not a big fan of any dairy. Keep it out if you can.
Excellent. And I just want to check in on Jonathan. You okay, Jonathan? Because you're very quiet.
Yeah. Yes, I've got contrasting opinions, and I know Phil and Ben have heard me say this before. I wouldn't say it's contrasting as in I think they're wrong. I just think it's very context specific. So myself, I know if I drop out the dairy, particularly the dairy fat, then I find that I'm able to drop fat faster. But I can only manage that for about 3, maybe 4 days. Then I start to get heart palpitations. The suggestion to me from some genetic testing that I've done seems to be that dropping out calcium, at least dietary calcium, seems to be the problem for me. So I looked a bit further into it. Spoke to some experts on it, and sort of we worked out it seems to be that about 24% of the population have a genetic polymorphism, which means they have a slightly higher requirement for calcium. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying you have to have dairy to, assimilate, absorb calcium, but it's a good way to get it in. And when, of course, we're talking about the context of this question, which is it bad for fat loss? Does it slow down fat loss? I'd say absolutely yes. But for myself, it's not the first thing I'd get rid of. I'll be looking at the macronutrient balance, the protein and fat. The protein amount when I work with clients tend to be pretty stable. Unless we're doing a protocol to lose fat faster, I might elevate protein just to help satiety. But that's the only instance when someone's trying to drop fat really fast, then I'll actually drop fat quite significantly. The biggest thing for me in terms of halting fat loss seems to be that people eat too much fat, funny enough. But there is a part of it which I believe is explained in something called the carbohydrate insulin model. And in my kind of experience of just working with people anecdotally, I can't back this up with any science. But I'd say probably it accounts for about 20% of fat loss. So when you've pulled these levers, so you've got your protein the right amount, you're healthy, you're in a position to actually lose fat. You're in a healthy position to lose fat. You can lower the fat intake slightly. Obviously, don't drop it down to zero because that's contraindicated. You won't be able to sustain it very long. And when you get to the point where you think, well, I don't really want to reduce my fat soluble vitamins, my fatty beef too much, eggs, what have you, then you can start to move towards the dairy. So for me, it's never a case of taking everything out of the diet. But then, of course, if Phil's working with an autoimmune patient or a client and they're saying to them, look, I'm not well, I've got lupus, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, all this other stuff, arthritis, then it's a different situation. I don't work with that many people that have that issue. So for me, if someone can tolerate dairy, I try to keep it in. But obviously, on the flip side, it is hyperpalatable. It was made thousands of years ago. Ben will probably know best when it was made, but it was made to store fat from animals, like in the form of dairy. So you're looking at, the butter, ghee, things like that. That's essentially what it's there for. That's why it exists nowadays, to store extra fat. But for myself, I keep it in. Now, saying that, I think if I reduce my dairy intake gradually, then yeah, perhaps I would be able to alter my genetic makeup in a way that my expressions aren't quite as strong, so I wouldn't get strong heart palpitations. Of course, I went from a mixed carnivore diet to a lion diet. I lasted 3 or 4 days and I felt horrendous, anxious. As soon as I added dairy back in, my macronutrient content was the same in terms of protein and fat, but getting rid of the dairy seemed to be the problem. I worked it out through a bit of a research. The dairy went back in first thing. Within 6 hours, I felt back to normal. So for me, it seemed to be impactful, but it's so context specific. So it's good to have different opinions and different experiences, because ultimately we all work with very different people.
You see, you're quite young. I think maybe you probably needed to be weaned better. And I think maybe be sort of species specific. Maybe get out on the streets, pursue some nursing mothers with a breast pump, maybe a tenner, see if you can get something, and see what you can do within your own sort of species, and see if that improves things even further.
Perhaps, yeah, I might be able to save some money as well if I can get it free off the teat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I've got to say on that anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm no stranger to it either. We're revealing our secrets here. But yeah, so sorry, I can never resist these daft interludes, but it's actually not that daft, is it? We are our own species. Let's see what happens with proper dairy consumption.
Also the sugars in human breast milk are quite different to cow milk as well. We've got more like galactase, I think, in human breast milk, and not so much lactose as well. So probably more species appropriate. We've had this question on one of our Q&As before, and people said, are there different kind of diets that are more appropriate in different stages of life? And our answer is yes. Breast milk until you're weaned, and then it's meat. That's it.
Yes, and it is that simple sometimes. But Jonathan hit the nail on the head there with the genetic element, because I think he mentioned the 24%. I did the 23. What is it? 23andMe or something. Anyway, the genetic testing, I can't remember. And I was trying to find my results because I looked that particular thing up, because I'm fine with that. But Harry Sopanos, who isn't British, so he can't be in the panel, but he is a brilliant guy. He's actually got the same thing as Jonathan, I think, where he has problems with calcium. So I'm going to go to the next question. Sorry, guys, someone's got to be the teacher. Someone's got to take control of this unruly mob. So it seems like it's me at the moment. So Jay, can supplementing with biotin help with skin issues due to excess protein intake? I can take that, or anyone else can take that. No one's unmuting. Go on, Jonathan.
Yeah. Jamie, stop eating so much protein. He's a well-trained guy. He's athletic. He is muscular. But I think the issue is in the question itself. I'd reduce the excess protein. So if you find out, you've eliminated eggs, for example, eliminated dairy, the things that are often toxic or, should I say, seem to increase eczema, skin issues, psoriasis, get rid of that first, which I'm sure he has. Then start to reduce the actual protein intake. It could be that you're getting dry skin because of that. I do know a lot of people that end up really thirsty because they eat so much protein. Think every time you eat protein, you often add a bit of extra salt to it. When you add extra salt, you get more thirsty. So I kind of think of it as a whole, So I'd probably reduce the protein slightly, then work from there. But biotin would potentially help. Personally, I wouldn't be able to say without an experiment, so without actually trying it out. Of course, I don't believe Jamie eats eggs. I think that's something that he has issues with. So he's not going to get a great deal of biotin from eggs, but he may be able to supplement, with a bit of liver every now and then. Some people freeze it, some people eat it. I know there's probably, biotin in other foods as well, but ultimately a whole food source is going to be a better option, I think, for a lot of people.
I think Rich is unmuted.
Yeah, I was just curious about what Jay's protein intake is. Because I eat protein ad lib. It's the only thing that I eat, and I eat quite a lot of it. I've never told anybody before to restrict protein, as I believe it's the most important macronutrient. We look at proteins and fats, but nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present. Protein in nature comes with fat. An egg is protein and fat. Chicken breast with the skin on is protein and fat. A piece of steak is protein and fat. And I think if we stick to the way the nature intended, then generally we're okay. That said, even certain protein sources within the carnivore lifestyle have been shown to elicit negative responses. Seafood, cheese and eggs, prawns, even pork and lamb. I think beef is the only thing that hasn't elicited a negative response. And I'd be curious if Jay has ever tried going strict lion diet in regards to skin conditions. But just curious. You may already know the answers, John.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's tried that, or at least a close variation of it. It seems to be, it could be a mixed bag of things that coming together to cause that issue. He's had it for quite a long time, so it'd require a lot of deep thought, I think, and a lot of experimentation for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. I think skin issues are often very much tied to liver function as well, with the skin being sort of, after the lungs, the third organ of detox. If the liver's compromised a little bit, then you can get skin issues. We've seen, I know it's controversial, and I know liver flushing, and a lot of people say it's nonsense, but I've seen so many incredible results with it, particularly with skin issues when people get the liver cleaned out, if it even works by those pathways. Having done 60 of them or so myself and still not really understanding them, we have seen some amazing results. And it's the only little bit of woo-woo left from my vegan years, but it does seem to work. And anything that really helps the liver, which a carnivore diet really will in the long run anyway, clear the liver. But have a look at liver function if there's a skin issue.
Yeah, and I think what you just said, Phil, if it's you do something and it seems to work, biotin doesn't really do anything with the skin, but it does help with the synthesis of keratin and also the absorption of fatty acids. So it's one of those, it's a water soluble vitamin, isn't it? A B7, if I remember rightly. So it's one of those things that you can deplete quite quickly. But I'm with you, really. It's a bit more holistic. I don't think, if you're writing in a question and it's Jay, I'm not being tough on your question there, but if you've got excess protein intake in your question, supplementing with something else isn't really the answer. And I'm with Rich as well on that. Is it really excess protein that's causing it? So I think that would be something to really dive quite deeply into. So I just want to tell people that are commenting, we are a little bit behind. We're about 20 minutes behind on the comments. So if you have commented and we haven't got to your question, you don't need to type it again. We will try to get to it. So spiritual hypertrophy. I reckon this might be one of Jonathan's, but I'm not sure. The question is, and if you're wondering why I'm reading the question out, it's because this will also be an audio podcast. So the question is, I'm going carnivore for the first time. I'm concerned about my performance for strongman. Can you talk about macros for athletes and the initial adaptation period?
I think we could probably go to town on this one, couldn't we?
Richard and I probably say the same. Rich, you go first, and then I'll try and keep it succinct as well.
Yeah, I'll leave you hit with the macros. I think we've got pretty similar opinions on macronutrient ratios when it comes to performance and things as well. But I don't believe that your performance will be hindered if you do things correctly. And if they are, it's only during the initial adaptation period. If you're coming from an adapted ketogenic background and you're coming into carnivore, then your body's already upregulated its ability to produce and utilize beta-hydroxybutyrate. So we've got the MCTs, the monocarboxylate transporters, and specific enzymes involved with utilizing beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that's a big factor when it comes to adaptation. And this is one of the reasons that people struggle when they become carnivore or ketogenic. That and electrolytes, as we said earlier, if you're coming from a state of high insulin, which most bodybuilders and powerlifters tend to be so, that insulin drops and it's going to signal the kidneys to release the sodium from the 4 points in the nephrons in the kidney. So sodium, super important. Now, when we look at sort of strength and protein, and carbohydrate doesn't build muscle. It increases muscle protein synthesis by 0. The activation of mTOR through leucine, so 3 grams of leucine will activate mTOR and allow muscle protein synthesis. But the co-ingestion of carbohydrate with protein will not further augment an increase in muscle protein synthesis, but increasing or adding fat, so the co-ingestion of fat with protein will increase muscle protein synthesis. So it's not a case of losing muscle or not being able to build muscle. But what happens is if you're coming from a background of high carbohydrate, what you may have in the muscle and you're not adapted is more volume in the muscle. So for every 1 gram of glycogen, your body's going to hold on to 3 grams of water. And that gives you leverage in the muscle. And we see this with athletes who supplement with anabolic steroids in the likes of, oh my goodness, I can never remember. Things like Dianabol, which will make you incredibly big, incredibly quickly, and incredibly strong. But when this person comes off this anabolic steroid, their strength drops back to where it was. Their size does so also, which means that they couldn't have built muscle within that time, which means there has to be the leverage within the muscle. So there is an argument that carbohydrate could potentially make you stronger in regards to that, but then you can offset that with the supplementation of creatine monohydrate, getting adequate sodium and potassium, and the sodium-potassium ratio needs to be spot on. And as you adapt into being keto and carnivore, the body will upregulate the lactic acid system, and you will be able to fill the muscle with glycogen and further hold on to water within the muscle. So strength, I don't think is an issue. I'm not very big. I wasn't big when I was bodybuilding, but I looked big for my size. But I was I was fairly strong. At 75k, I was benching 165k, squatting 230, and deadlifting. Squatting 190 and deadlifting 230, which I think at the time put me in like the top 3 in the UK in my weight and age category, which is why I was going to go into powerlifting, but that didn't come off because I tore my pec, and then I went down the rabbit hole of endurance sport. But that's another story. So yeah, that's my quick 2-penneth. But I think that if you do it correctly and allow those adaptations to take place, then I think you can be stronger. Just as strong, if not stronger, because the other advantage, sorry, John, just going off on one really quickly as well, is when you're consuming carbohydrate, most carbohydrates come from a lectin source. And lectins and phytic acid will block the absorption of other nutrients, particularly zinc, iron, and magnesium. And zinc is essential for the production of testosterone, which is essential for building muscle. So all of these other things that you would be putting in to increase your strength are absolutely counterintuitive to healing, repairing, and building that muscle. So carnivore is definitely the key. I think it's just you need to stick to it. Jonathan will advise on macros, but creatine and electrolytes are all big pluses for me also.
Yeah, good shout. I think everything Richard said is bang on. After I've said my bit and Ben said his bit, I'd probably recommend a consultation with myself or Richard. Either one of us will be able to help you very well, I think. In terms of like transitioning, I'd look at doing it over a period of about 4 to 8 weeks if you've been on a shoddy diet. The main thing that you'll find is that you'll be eating probably very lean accidentally. So when people say eat the fatty meat, eat the fatty meat. And what you find is if you're a big boy, you're going to need extra fat with that. So you're going to find, you know, say you're on 200 grams of protein a day or something or more, you know, you're going to be on 2, 3, 4, some people 500 grams of protein, fat with that. What I would suggest to most people is just to incrementally increase that. So a little guide I give people sometimes is just maybe initially the first week, half the carbs, increase the fats. Maybe say you drop 300 carbs, maybe increase the fat by maybe 150 grams, something like that. It's just a ballpark guideline. Then just keep adding it and switching it that way. So for every 10 grams of carbs, say, increase fat by maybe 5 grams. I'll probably do that over a period of maybe 1 or 2, maybe even 3 months. You'll know if you're not digesting the fat very well, if your stool starts to float. And I notice for a lot of people that try to transition too fast. Transitioning slowly is really helpful. You won't get as much as a performance dip because you're not stressing your body. So every time you change your dietary intake, your gut microbiome changes and it has to adapt according to that. So if you do that too fast, it is a stress to the body, and you won't feel much benefit from it. If you're a big boy, like I just said, I'd recommend buying Richard's keto electrolyte products. Someone's website, Keto Pro Electrolytes, Google it. They're like 15 quid or something. It's very good value. They're a good product. I recommend them. I do use them sometimes. Outside of that, macros, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo, something like that is a good ballpark figure. If you're already eating very high protein, I'd pick the higher amount. And what you'll find eventually, you go along your journey and your recovery is not great. Well, is it protein or fat? So do a bit of experimentation. Perhaps increase the protein if you're really sore, and don't be afraid to increase it even more. I know some people that just have to eat a lot of protein. But that's all that being said, that's assuming that you're metabolically healthy, you're fit, you're well, you're active, and then you can apply those things. If you've got some autoimmunity, then it's a different scenario. You might have to be a bit more select and picky about how you adapt the things you add in or take out. Oxalate dumping does happen to quite a few people. There's ways you can get around that. I think Stephen's got great videos on oxalate dumping and how to put that into remission. You've got the thing about Dr. Sally Kane Norton going on Stephen's podcast on Sunday, this coming week. Phil's got a good podcast with her, I believe. So check that out. But if you've got more questions on that, it might have to wait until next time, but we can always elaborate there. I think Ben's got an anecdote.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really fascinated to know how carnivore can help with strongman training. I've been a strongman fan. I've never trained or competed that way. And I know, for example, I remember, being like an interview with Eddie Hall, saying that after he won World's Strongest Man in 2017, his doctors and nutritionists and everyone said, you're kind of done. He knew that he wasn't going to try and train up to that level again, because they simply said to him, your liver and your kidneys will not take that level of throughput of food and just processing all that. He says they'll pack in. But what's really interesting about this, so I'm going to just share a quick anecdote, because I've been I'm doing some work with Dr. Anthony Chafee at the moment, and his story is really interesting, because when he first went carnivore, he was studying at medical school in the US, and he was training very, very hard at rugby, and then went on to play professionally in England as well. Now, when he was doing that training, he would do uni in the morning, go and do like 3.5 hours rugby training in the afternoon or evening, and then even hit the gym after that. And what he found was that it didn't matter how much and how hard he trained, he could his recovery was just almost instantaneous. And he even did a test in this, and he did the most insane leg session that he's ever done. And he actually says in his kind of story of his carnivore journey that he phoned up a friend and said, I've done something really stupid. I may not be able to walk for several days. But apparently the next day after this ridiculous leg session, he was absolutely fine. Just a little twinge when walking up the stairs, for example. So what I'm fascinated to know is if carnivore and being zero carb and zero plant can help your recovery and accelerate your recovery to that degree, how possible it may be, and I don't have an answer for this, how possible it may be for people training for strongman and for bodybuilding to do more intense, abbreviated training, because the reason why these big guys are guzzling so much food is because it may be because they're simply overtraining, right? So whether you could get the same kind of gains and the same kind of results with shorter and more intense training and improved recovery. So I'd love to get your guys' view on that as well, whether that may be a possibility.
Well, I was just chatting privately with Jonathan because we've got 6 questions. Can we get onto the questions, Ben, that people have posted, or do you want to? Because we were going to do an hour, and I'm thinking we'll do a bonus 15 minutes if everyone's up for that, because people have bothered to turn up and ask questions.
Yeah, that's just a hypothesis. So, we can chew on that. We can talk about it anytime. Let's do a quick fire round. Let's do it.
If you don't mind. I just think because we've told people that we've got this thing going on. Here's a quick one, which is really easy. It's going to be easy to respond to this one. George was adding weight and sharply stopped when they removed dairy and went meat only. So, yep, that's cool. So that's a nice comment. Thank you very much. This is also on the strength training. Linear progression re-strength training couldn't fit in previous comment. So linear progression, progressing fine, started carnivore, progress stopped. 2 weeks in, lost 2K, 6'5", 94 kilograms. I was doing 1K of meat and OMAD. Now doing 1.7K of just meat. Do I need to eat more? Anyone?
To me, I don't know. I mean, I love the way that people kind of analyze this and figure out what's going on. But to me, I don't know. It's very simple. I think after a while, carnivore, your tastes refine so much. And if you trust the process, even like, today we thought maybe it's a good day for oysters. So we had oysters, might not have them for another month, or I need some liver today or something like that. And the same thing is with exertion, like I'm not really training at the moment. And yet at the weekend I played this gig and I had to travel a long way to it and then play the gig, stay up late. I was hungry. I ate late at night, which I don't normally do. And I don't normally eat eggs or pork, but in the morning I just got up. I was so hungry. I went down to the hotel and had an absolute massive amount of egg yolks and bacon. And because my body craved it, and it usually doesn't till about midday. And so just listening to your body and even the fat and protein ratios, it's great to analyze all this, but I'm just some old hippie that goes on intuition. And it really is a skill that we've forgotten that needs to be brought out again, with all the analysis. What does your body say? What does it want? What does it want to do? And also the business of, dropping out dairy and then not being able to train so heavy. And maybe you've gone beyond your capacity. It's if you're competing and that's your livelihood, it's a different thing. If you want to get as big as possible. But if you're just going for health, does anybody really notice if you've got like half an inch extra on your biceps or something? Not really. They don't. You just want to get as healthy as you possibly can on your optimal ancestral diet. And that should be good enough for most people. Just intuition and listen to your body. When you train, you get hungrier. Do you want a fatty meat day to day? Do you want a little bit more protein, a little less fat the other day? I don't know. maybe it's because after 8 years, those signals are pretty easy to listen to. Whereas I understand that before that, most of the signals were towards eating as much kettle chips and Haagen-Dazs ice cream as I possibly could. But when you get rid of those signals, your body kind of tells you what you need, I think.
Yeah, I was just looking in the messages there to see what's happened to Jonathan. So I think he's popping back in. So we'll put a question up why he's coming back in. And this is from Matthew. The only dairy I can tolerate without getting IBS, skin and mental health issues problems, only tolerate pasteurized cottage cheese and soft cheese. Is this likely a histamine or a lactose problem? Anyone?
I should imagine it's the lactose if it's pasteurized, isn't it? But anybody else got any other thoughts?
I don't know. The cottage cheese thing is weird. I mean, I haven't eaten it for years. Oddly, I just saw a tub of it turn up in the fridge today. The missus bought. I don't know why she wants to eat that. The last one she bought went bad and went in the bin. But I don't know. I look back at my old sort of vegetarian, sort of spiritual type diet, Indian food, and everybody used to chuck a load of cottage cheese on the top, and it definitely had a lot less of a reaction than cheese or double cream or anything like that. But I don't know why, actually. It's got me thinking here. I don't know why about cottage cheese, why it wouldn't have a reaction. I don't. But then again, does it have a reaction down the line? Again, with dairy, is this a something that builds up over the years? I don't know, but I do know people who can take cottage cheese and can't take other stuff.
Yes.
But I really don't know why. I'm not sure why it would be a histamine reaction, although, histamine is associated with a lot of dairy. When I eat dairy, I get hay fever. When I don't, I get none. That's it.
I think it's the aging. I mean, I've got a video on my YouTube channel called "There's Something About Dairy." Do you like that little joke there? But anyway, and the processing of the different cheeses, how you arrive at these different cheeses depends on how much liquid is taken out, how many proteins are left in, how they're aged. So I would be very surprised if it was histamine, because histamine tends to be associated more with the aging of something. So everything that dies, plants, humans, whatever, anything living that dies immediately starts to produce histamine. And as it breaks down, as it ages, you get more and more histamine, which is why a 28-day hung steak can be a real no-no for someone, even though it's absolutely lush, because of histamine, just of histamines. So I think, look at the food and think, is this likely to be aged? And if it's aged, like an aged cheese, aged meat, then it's more than likely going to be histamine. And I think when you've ruled that out, then if you do a differential diagnosis, it's probably lactose. It could be something else. But I think I strongly recommend watching that video, because I literally just go through the process from milk to, as they take out more liquid, they take out more sugars, and it's what you end up with. It's really simple, and then you can identify what's causing you a problem. Right. I think this is a great question. Although we're focusing a bit too much possibly on dairy, I think it's a good one, because Lambs is saying, isn't raw dairy beneficial for fat-soluble vitamins, though, like K2 or MK4?
Well, maybe it is, but at what cost, possibly? I just, again, for me, it's kind of simple. I just look at the ancestral model. How many other animals eat dairy past weaning? None. The Maasai seem to get away with it. Maybe they have some kind of genetic thing. Maybe it's that they do everything else right. They're out in the sun. They got their feet on the ground. They exercise. They don't have artificial light and EMFs. Maybe they'd be even more healthy if they just had the blood and meat and they didn't have the milk. I don't know. But it doesn't seem to do them much harm. But is it necessary? Well, if it was necessary, then the tribes that don't eat it would have died out, I'd say. I'm kind of simple on these things.
I think there was a study done, wasn't it, in the early 1900s, I think, where they tested the Maasai against the Akakuyu, who were a vegetarian tribe. And the Maasai were fitter and healthier on every metric, bar one, which was intestinal permeability. And the only difference was that they were consuming the raw dairy, completely unpasteurized. So, it comes back to the point that we made earlier, isn't it? That all dairy causes that intestinal permeability. The raw may confer some benefit, whether it be short-term and more detrimental, in the long term, but it does definitely cause that intestinal permeability. So I think it's, there are other ways to get your fats in for your fat soluble vitamins. It doesn't have to come from your dairy.
Right. And there's a comment here that's caught my eye. Brick Gow in Texas. Howdy. If any of you guys there in the UK have carnivore stories that you think could help others, reach out to Kerry on his Homestead How YouTube channel. He's working on putting together a carnivore doc. Well, if you've got
putting together one, sort of like, Anthony Chaffee's arms, Sean Baker's legs. Is this some sort of a Frankenstein carnivore doc, or is that document or doctor?
Documentary, mate. Documentary.
Gotcha. I'm only messing.
The voice of reason there from Ben. Well, firstly, he's not in my good books for two reasons, or that channel isn't, because one is they did a 24-hour live stream and said it was the first one ever, and it wasn't, because Rich and I did it, and everybody in this room was guests on it. Yeah, and we've had a couple of members point that out to them, and they've been banned from the channel for pointing it out. So this is me actually angry, but in front of a camera angry. So I think that's awful. And I've also reached out to that channel to see if they'll come on, and they don't even reply. So you get onto them, Brick Gow in Texas, and say, you've upset the UK Carnivore, definitely, because they did the 24-hour live stream. There it is on YouTube. And then you said yours was the first. Right. So that's that out of the way. I'm just having a little temper tantrum there. And I know Rich would as well, but I'm not letting him. Matthew, now this is good for us. It would be awesome if we could have a carnivore keto meetup in UK in 2024. Any comments?
Yeah. I'd be up for that. Yeah. I think this is where, you jumped into action, Jonathan, wasn't it? I think you heard me probably ranting doing a live with Stephen in regards to a few other carnivores who did a carnivore meetup in the UK. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I wasn't invited. Stephen, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'd like to think that the five of us are probably predominantly the leading figures in the UK in regards to keto, carnivore, and health and well-being in general, as far as diet goes. And these people just didn't seem to know who we were, which kind of got my back up a little bit, because you start seeing these posts pop up with this meetup, and all the top carnivores in the UK are meant to be there. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't even know it existed, but it's but never mind, we're here now. But yeah, I'm up for a meetup.
Did you shout at them, Richard? Do you know who I am?
With the accent.
Should have done that.
I just want to say something quickly. Sorry. Kerry from that video, Homestead, how he did promise me that he would interview me for his channel. It's been about 3 months now. It's not happened. So what have you?
Yes. Oh, right. My dog is barking. He's saying it's our bonus 15 minutes is up. So Cud Kiddie, 35-year-old male, 7 months carnivore, feel amazing. All of a sudden, I have cravings every day for porridge oats. I have no other cravings. And the odd thing is I hated porridge pre-carnivore and never ate it. And here's the continued. Why is this? And is it a sign of a deficiency or something? Fire away, guys, while I go and make sure my dog's okay.
I'll quickly chime in. I think he probably just craves more fat. Some people some people can eat a lot initially because they're missing vital nutrients that they may not have had in the diet prior to the carnivore diet. They may have hit that threshold, and now they're like, meat nausea. You sometimes hear, or meat aversion. I've heard of people having that. I've had that myself. If you're finding that you're not hungry for something, don't eat it. The thing is, the moment you put something else in because you think, well, I should be eating something, carbs are addictive, the dopamine hit, but long term, it's not a great way to go about it. You end up having to fight yourself harder every time you add those foods back in. So I'd probably just focus on the carnivore foods. It may be that you just are hungry for a certain kind of food, but you're not sure what it is. Maybe you've gone from mixed animal food diet to lion diet in like a week. Okay, that could be a reason why. There's probably a lot to break down in this instance, but it could be just a lack of fat or something, or lack of energy. So I look at it from a holistic point of view.
It's funny actually, because I was going to just say, well, maybe he's got a porridge deficiency or whatever, but seriously, it's when you have inflammation, it's a difficult one to explain. It can sort of take you back in the years. It's like I ate some stuff that, because I have autoimmunity in my background, I got into real trouble last winter, and it was from eating dairy, pork, chicken, and eggs, which I found easier to find on the road, with the band and whatever. And I thought I was invincible, and I got in real trouble this time last year. And it was weird. When there was inflammation, I started to crave weird things. Like I kept on and on thinking about macaroni cheese. And I haven't eaten that for decades. Really, my mum used to make it when I was a kid. But it was all I could think of. I want macaroni cheese. I didn't have it. But there's something about inflammation. I've never really thought about it in this way before. But if there is some inflammation, it might even take you back to those times where you craved that sort of thing that got you into the problem in the first place. Now, I've never said anything like that before or even thought about it, but it's just occurred to me. I would just ride it out, eat some more fats, eat some proper stuff. And nobody needs porridge. There's nothing in there, nothing whatsoever in there that you could possibly need that you're not getting from meat. So it's a little echo of an old addiction. Do some EFT, tap it out.
Are we back?
Yeah,
You're back. We didn't go anywhere.
All right.
We've just been sitting in an embarrassed silence while you were away.
I just want to quickly point out the fantastic visuals by Stephen today. He's done a great job.
Thank you very much. Right. I think we'll make this the last. Well, actually, there's one very quick. It seems like a setup question. All right, we'll do this one first, and then we'll do the last one. So, Rick, is it possible that being on a carnivore diet for decades is why I have been plenty strong for physical work and never suffered injuries despite moving heavy objects on a regular basis?
yes.
I've got a lot to say about this, right? And it's basically yes.
Yes, absolutely. So let's finish with this one. Herbert, how, and I'm reckoning the word is missing here, how is elevated glucose detected by the body, and by what mechanism the insulin is then secreted? When is elicited by elevated cortisol or excess digestive protein breakdown? There's a lot there. Basically, a lot of people think that once your blood glucose goes up, your insulin is produced from the beta cells. But you've got to look at the incretin effect, which is absolutely 10 times more powerful than infusing blood glucose. You're actually putting glucose into your bloodstream, basically. So what they've done to prove that you have these cells in your small intestine on the brush border, when you eat something that has glucose in, once it gets into your small intestine, that is when the pancreas really ramps up the production of insulin. So I'm rushing that answer in case anyone else wants to dive in. I could go on about this for a long, long time, but we do need to go. Anyone else want to pipe up with something?
Yeah, it's just done by magic. It's just magic. What happened? Right.
Well, let's get rid of this. And Herbert, if you want a better answer with a bit more time, come on Sunday at 7:00 or anyone's channel and ask that question. Actually, so how are we going to wrap this up, guys? Should it be Jonathan, as it was his idea?
I'll just quickly say thank you guys for contributing your time. I appreciate you guys do have your live things. You do have groups. Coach Stephen does have a live with Richard on, I believe, Sunday night. And I have a live on Monday night, which is Carnivore Muscle Ramblings. Ben and Phil both have a a brilliant group. It's like they call it the Big Fat Tribe, so I'd recommend finding out about that on Phil's channel. Effectively, it's a whole library catalog of pretty much everything you need to do and read up on to understand the carnivore diet, how to get into it, all the ins and outs, a lot of ancestral stuff, the historical stuff, the stuff about the food guidelines. It's really in depth. Honestly, if you joined that right now, you can pay a really affordable amount. I'd actually recommend joining that. It's great stuff. And then Rich has got his great website, which is Keto Pro, that sells good products, good quality. As a fellow nutritionist, I understand how much effort you can put into designing and formulating products. I can see that the effort has been put in there. So I'd recommend checking that out as well. I sell stuff as well, and I do stuff online. Just visit my website, it's compositionconsultant.com.
That's excellent. Well, should we just say bye and
yeah. Thanks for all your questions, everyone.
See you next week or something.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks, guys. It was fun.